let me set the scene. I'm a kid. There's a new movie out called Heaven Can Wait. The poster looks good. I don't really know who Warren Beatty is, but what I do know is that there is a trailer before this film for Superman the movie. So I go and see Heaven Can Wait, thinking it'll be okay. And then I fall in love with a film that just hits me at a young age to think, I really like romantic comedies. Who is this Warren Beatty guy? And why is this film so good? Because for a film about love, it's got an ending that I don't think you could do anymore. So as I said at the beginning, basically Warren Beatty plays an athlete. He plays for the LA Rams. He dies. Sorry, he's in an accident. He's taken to heaven, and there's a bit of a mix-up. He lived in this accident and therefore wants to go back to his body. However, his body has been cremated. He's put in a body of an eccentric billionaire, and Warren Beatty decides that he still wants to take this new soul to the Super Bowl. It's got a strange combination. It's a love story, it's a comedy, and it's a sports movie. Deftly handled by Warren Beatty. He makes it work. And he plays opposite a fantastic cast. James Mason, Charles Grodin, Diane Cannon, and the effervescent Julie Christie. So yes, you can tell it's a film that I adore. But Andy, you watched it recently. Do you love it?
Yeah, I watched it recently. I have watched it previously. I watched this when I didn't see it at the cinema when it got released. I was maybe a bit too young at that age. I mean, I was going to the cinema, but not for films like this. So I caught this on VHS release in the early 80s. And it was one of those rentals that you just get because there was nothing else to get. I sat and watched it. And I remember as a kid, I found myself enjoying it. And then I wanted to watch it again. And it was one of those films that I always circled the Radio Times if I knew it was going to be showing, because there was something about this film that captivated me at a young age. And I think one of the things that initially captivated me is the Concorde, isn't it?
Yes.
So in the scenes, yeah.
Warren Beatty's taken to heaven.
Yeah, and in heaven. Yeah, it's the typical depiction of heaven. It looks like a Queen video. It's, misty floors of the clouds and like a white background. You just expect Freddie Mercury to be like singing Who Wants to Live Forever in the background. But as they travel across, there's a group of people waiting to board a perfectly white Concorde to take them to heaven. And I love the whole idea that the Concorde is what you journey to heaven in. Because at the time, the Concorde was a majestic flight. Everyone dreamed of going on the Concorde because it was this supersonic, pointed nose. I remember when, back in Liverpool, Liverpool Airport, Speak Airport as it used to be back then, I remember us camping outside there on one day because the Concorde was going to land there one day, and there was crowds of people just wanting to see the Concorde. Yeah, there was something spectacular about this plane. I had models of it. I dreamed about this plane, and I liked the idea that if I died, I'd get a chance to go on the Concorde. And I think that's what, as a little kid, really drew me in. I mean, the Concorde was just... I don't think people can really appreciate now what this plane meant to a lot of us in that era when it was just suddenly like, supersonic speed. Wow, it does a sonic boom. What's going on? The nose lifts up so it can go into its high-speed flight. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit...
Yeah, should we go back to the film?
I'm getting very excited about the Concorde.
Because of that, we will do the airport series, so you can talk
We
about...
are definitely doing the airport series.
Or was it the Concorde?
Airport 79, the Concorde.
79 was it? Let's return to Heaven Can Wait, directed by Warren Beatty after that slight interlude.
It was the Concorde that captivated me as a kid. But going back to rewatch it this week, I still had a smile on my face when I saw the Concorde. But I actually started to appreciate the film itself from an adult perspective. And what a beautiful screwball comedy throwback this is. It doesn't feel
Yeah,
that dated.
absolutely.
It feels because it doesn't really set itself in an era too much. Because the sports aspect, that same sport is still a big thing these days, American football. So everything in this can still play today. And you've got like eccentric billionaire who's been his businesses are corrupting the planet, and an activist who wants them to stop harming the planet, and that's still relevant today. And it's just so much fun. I had so many chuckles throughout it. The dialogue is great. There's some sparkling moments of like just subtle comedy. The fact that his butler starts to like notice that he's talking to himself because he's talking to the angels who are watching. He's talking to Mr. Jordan, who no one else can see, basically.
Played by the wonderful James Mason. And I'm not going to do the James Mason voice because that's what we always do. But James Mason brings gravitas to the role of Mr. Jordan, who is the lead angel, who's helping the character of Joe Pendleton, who's the football player, in his new body. As you said, is an eccentric billionaire. Leo Farnsworth, which I think is a great name, Leo Farnsworth. If I ever come back, I want to come back as Leo Farnsworth, who's trying to be murdered by the ever brilliant Charles Grodin and
Yes.
Leo's wife, played by Diane Cannon. And as you said, he falls in love with activist Julie Christie. Now, they'd worked together before, Beatty and Christie, they'd worked together in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which is a brilliant Robert Altman film that you should check out. And I believe they had a relationship. And in fact, any woman at that particular point had a relationship with Warren Beatty. This film just oozes charm. It's delightful. It's old-fashioned. As you said, it's that screwball comedy setup. But because it's Warren Beatty, who's not known for comedy, he gives it a sort of all the fantastic elements, a sort of natural, down-to-earth quality, and that makes the film work. As you say, it's incredibly witty. There's just something very lovely about it, some fantastic dialogue. It's a heartwarming film, and I think that the fact that it ends on a note where the audience don't want it to go, even though it's logical for the story, gives it an extra dimension that this is not a neatly wrapped up romantic comedy. And I think that cynicism in the ending and playing against expectation makes it into a very, very different kind of film. And I tell you what, every time it gets to the reveal, I kind of well up a little bit. I'm doing it now because I think there's just a touch of honesty about
it. This was the first time that Beatty not only worked as producer and writer, but also stepped behind the camera to direct as well, alongside Buck Henry, who he had on set to direct whenever Beatty was going to be in front of the camera. But this was Warren Beatty's first outing as director, and I think he did a pretty good job. He made it, like you say, he's not known for comedy. He's not an actor known for comedy. So the comedy and humour come from the situations that are created rather than from japery by him. And it comes from, the witty lines of dialogue, such as, I felt that ever since Mr. Farnworth was pretending to talk to someone, he might want to pretend to give him cocoa too, when 2 cups of cocoa are presented in front. Or, I mean, when he gets dressed to go down for that meeting with Julie Christie's character, and he's wearing polo gear and given a polo hammer, and it's like, do I play polo? And his butler Sisk just goes, not really, sir. And it's just like subtle humour, and it's the way it's delivered. Who's the actor who plays Sisk?
Oh, I can't remember.
Joseph Mayer. Joseph Mayer in the role of Sisk is just so. He's the perfect aristocratic butler who's got utter condescension in every utterance that they deliver from their mouth. but you love him. He's marvellous. His little put downs are just so subtle that you just can't help but be charmed. But like you say, the rest of the cast are fantastic. I mean, James Mason is always great, and I'm always going to do the James Mason voice whenever I say James Mason. And Julie Christie is you can understand how Warren Beatty can fall in love with Julie Christie through her chemistry with him on this film. She's just so charming.
When they talk about chemistry on a film, as soon as they are in a room together, it sparks. It is just a natural chemistry that really shines through. And it doesn't always. You put couples together. I'm thinking of Kim Basinger and Al Baldwin when they were a couple. That chemistry never came through on the screen, but it does beautifully on this. So you might recognize the name of the film. It was originally called Here Comes Mr. Jordan, which was based on a play. And then there was another film called Heaven Can Wait. And this film should have been called Here Comes Mr. Jordan, but they took the title Heaven Can Wait because it was a better title than Here Comes Mr. Jordan. So it is a remake, and it has been remade again, which is well worth avoiding, which starred Chris Rock. I don't know much more about it than that, and apart from I saw it on a plane and turned it on.
Down to Earth, wasn't it? That was Down to Earth in 2001. It's not a great film, but it's not just those films that are directly drawing from the source material, but there's also been loads of things that have been inspired by it, because there was a Down to Earth film in 1947 which had Rita Hayworth in it. There was Here Comes Mr. Jordan, which was kind of a sequel in 1941. There was also, I mean, you could also say that Xanadu, the Olivia Newton-John film, is kind of a remake of Down to Earth, the 1947 film, the sequel to Here Comes Mr. Jordan. It's complicated, and Bruce Kimmel has tried to sort out this confusion in interviews and talk about, where the actual pattern of all the different spin-offs, alternate takes, inspired bys belong. But this film is the one that stands out as the one to check out.
It was heavily nominated for 9 Academy Awards, with Beatty becoming the second person, only after Orson Welles for Citizen Kane, to be nominated for producing, directing, writing, and acting. The film won for Best Art Direction, and it is an absolute delight. And if you want something that is whimsical, heartwarming, funny, laugh out loud funny, in the style of the old screwball comedies, with a great cast and great music by Dave Grusin. Sorry.
And a Concorde.
And a Concorde for Andy. This film cannot fail. It is really worth seeing. It's charming. I don't think Warren Beatty, for me, has ever been funnier. He tried to do it with Ishtar, but nothing he's ever done in his repertoire has been as heartwarming as this film. I have so much love for this film, and all I can recommend is you must see it. When I was a kid and discovering cinema, my parents did a very wonderful thing. They let me stay up late, well, it felt late back then, to watch all the run of the Marx Brothers films. And for me, the Marx Brothers, especially in their early Paramount movies, are some of the greatest comedians, with some of the most comedic, with some of the best comedic films of all time that have never been bettered. The Marx Brothers, you say, who were they? Well, they were Groucho, probably the most famous of the Marx Brothers, Harpo, Chico, and Zeppo. And this was their final film together. Groucho always played Groucho, but in this, he's a newly installed president of a fictional country of Fredonia. Zeppo is his secretary, while Chico and Harpo are spies to the neighboring country of Sylvania. Relations between Groucho and the Sylvanian ambassador deteriorate during the film as the two countries eventually go to war. It's got one of the greatest, funniest gags ever put to film, the mirror scene.
Yes.
unless you've seen it, you don't know what I'm talking about. So I urge you to watch the Marx Brothers. But Andy, do you agree? Is this one of the funniest films of all time?
Yes, very much so. I mean, the Marx Brothers, like you say, this is the last of their run with Paramount. They did 5 films with Paramount before moving on, and the brothers kind of split one by one from the band. But this is them at their perfection. I mean, they come up through the vaudeville circuit. They were huge on vaudeville, and there were more to the Marx Brothers. The whole family were part of the vaudeville, like the vaudeville industry. And when they make their first step over to film, and the first film was Coconuts, that was basically a retread of one of the vaudeville plays that they played. And it was a lot of like musical moments, and then a bit of comedy, and then a bit of slapstick, and then another musical moment, and a typical vaudeville production, just a whole evening of different entertainment combined into one very loose story. And that continued throughout. But I think by the time it got to Duck Soup, they kind of refined it, and they'd not only refined how the storytelling and what the balance of music to story is, and the comedy to antics going on. They refined their own personalities as well. Because as well as watching this over the past week, I've been watching. Well, I've got all the Marx Brothers films to work through, so I've watched another 3 or 4 of the Marx Brothers films, and watching their progression and evolution of their characters over the first few films up until this point. This is the point at which they nail everything. I mean, Groucho is Groucho. It's just spitting out one-liners and mocking people around him in biting ways.
Especially poor old Margaret Dumont all the way through it.
Yeah, and I think Margaret Dumont is the perfect foil for Groucho in any of the films that they co-starred against. She's so perfectly placed, and she's so in on the humor that it just allows him to just freewheel away with, like, jokes about her size, but all the time. And this was a common thing whenever she was in one of the films, he'd be mocking her and wanting to get rid of her, then find out she's rich and suddenly be trying to woo her at the same time. And it works a treat because of how spitfire Groucho's dialogue delivery is.
Brilliant.
Something might not land, but that's okay, because half a second later, something else has you in hysterics, because he's just genius. And watching the Coconuts, it felt a bit too staged, but in this, it just flows. It absolutely flows. Then you've got, and when I was younger to watch these, I never really cared too much for Harpo and Chico, but I have grown a love for them over the years, and watching them this week, Harpo's leg lifting up antics whenever he's talking to people, that he always manages to get them to grab his leg, and it's like it is taking handkerchiefs out of pockets and like slipping off watches and things like that. All his sleight of hand tricks is just so smoothly done. I've just had so much fun, because I think what works with the Marx Brothers, particularly this 4 of the Marx Brothers, is each of them brings his own thing to it. And it's not 4 people doing exactly the same routine. It's 4 people doing something completely different, but gelling together. I know some people argue that Zeppo's kind of surplus to requirements, but I like the fact that they've got a kind of straight man charmer.
Yeah, and that works, because you against all this, you always needed a straight man. Any good comedian needs a straight man. You think of Morecambe and Wise. That works perfectly, because Ernie Wise was always a straight man that Eric Morecambe could riff upon. And that's what makes their comedy so unique and so funny. And you need Zeppo, and I miss Zeppo when they moved from Paramount. And I honestly believe that, though, The Day at the Races is still considered to be probably their most classic film, that the early Paramount films are more anarchic, are funnier, are less structured, and less what do I want to try to say? Because they became a bit by the money, didn't they? Later on, what's the word I'm looking for? They became sort of formulaic in the later films, but these were anarchic. Groucho as Rufus T. Flywheel, which is just a Rufus T. Firefly, which is just a great name. It just keeps the gags coming all the time. There is never a moment when he's on screen where there's not a punchline, and it's so quotable, and it's just so the comedy timing is perfect, and that's because, as you said, they honed their skills on stage. While this is considered to be a classic Marx Brothers film, and a film that eventually ended up in 1990 in the United States Library of Congress because they deemed Duck Soup to be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. This didn't do as well as the previous ones. Now, it was a tough time. It was the start of the Great Depression. Paramount was in a very, very rough spot, and while it wasn't seen as a box office flop, as it's sometimes reported, it was a financial disappointment. It opened mixed reviews, and the guys decided that after bitter contract disputes, including a threatened boycott by the Marxists, that just as Duck Soup went into production, that they would part ways because they fulfilled their 5-page obligations, and that was the end. But I think Paramount was a great ground for them because they let the Marx Brothers do whatever they wanted. And as I said, I think the later films are, well, funny. They like that. They like that razor sharp wit. They like that absurdity in these films.
Yeah. This is compared to their previous films, this was a reasonably shorter production, and there's no harp sections by Harpo, there's no piano sections by Chico within this. There's a brief moment when Harpo leans over into a piano and starts playing the strings within the piano, but that's all that we get. And when I used to watch these films, those moments used to break me away and used to make me go, oh, I don't like these.
Me too.
I'm not bothered with these. But rewatching this week, I've actually enjoyed those little extra elements of music that they had in the earlier ones, and it made me miss them in this for some reason, and particularly Chico with playing the piano, because it's the way he plays the piano in the films. He's got a very good style to, like, tiny little pinky moves, like to flip to the end, that is just captivating. But I don't think this film needed those breakout moments. It still has a few song pieces that do kind of just get a bit repetitive, but it doesn't overdo it. It just keeps everything to the comedy. Like you said, the lines of dialogue are immensely quotable, and they're so rapid fire that everything is just a gem. I mean, one that always creases me is, remember, you're fighting for this woman's honor, which is probably more than she ever did. And I just love that.
You got me already. Absolutely got me.
It's just perfection. The mirror scene, like you've mentioned earlier, it wasn't the first film to use a mirror scene. I mean, there was Harold Lloyd had done a similar kind of moment in one of his films, but it's got to be one of the most perfect moments of a fake mirror scene. And this is clearly the scene that has inspired the use of that same kind of approach in comedies throughout the decades. We've all seen the fake mirror scenes where someone is trying to pretend there's someone else, but then they're caught in a doorway, and so they pretend against them to mock their actions, to pretend that it's a mirror that they're looking at. This version of it is basically comedy genius from start to finish. I was creasing with laughter as, like, he's crouching on the floor to try to catch him unawares. Oh, if you've not seen it, that scene alone is worth watching this whole film for.
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic sequence. It's inspired so many other great mirror sequences. Bugs Bunny used it. They even used it in an episode of The X-Files.
Yeah. What I did find interesting when I was looking up details in this film is that the country in this is called Fredonia. And it's basically a Mussolini kind of inspired parody-like setting. But the small village of Fredonia in New York complained about the possible negative impact that the film might have on their town. the Marx Brothers replied to them with "Change the name of your town, it's hurting our picture," which I thought was just a perfect comeback to a small village thinking that someone's going to watch a film which says Fredonia and go, "Oh, I'm not going to Fredonia." Oh,
This film influenced so many other films, so many other comedians. You wouldn't have had the early Woody Allen
no.
films without the Marx Brothers, because that whipfire, razor sharp dialogue was seen in the earlier. Taking something away from Woody Allen there, but his earlier films where they were just outrageous and slightly surreal, as Duck Soup is. And also, you get the scene near the end of Hannah and Her Sisters that Woody Allen's character has a chance screening of Duck Soup and convinces that character that life is worth living, and he abandons his suicidal impulses. There is mention of it in The Bananas. I don't think you would have had Help, the Beatles film, without the Marx Brothers, because it's almost a Marx Brothers film.
Yeah. Their influence is felt right up until present day. Even, you could even look to Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses, where he's named the clown Captain Spaulding, which is named after a Marx Brothers character.
Yes, of course.
The influence of the Marx Brothers throughout the history of film cannot be denied. Most of their films are definitely worth checking out, but this is the one that everyone should see. I mean, Night of the Opera, Day at the Races, great films. Monkey Business, had a lot of fun watching that, but this is the pinnacle of the Marx Brothers. This is four brothers at the top of their game, at the top of their interactivity, with a really, really well-paced script, just having a riot of a time and letting you enjoy them.
If you've never checked out the Marx Brothers, we implore you to do so. Yes, they're dated. There might be moments which now don't sit well with a modern day audience, but the gags are still funny. Without the Marx Brothers, this idea of fast punchline, memorable throwaway lines wouldn't have existed. And as Andy said, if you're going to start with the Paramount films. You can get them on DVD. They are absolutely a treasure.